All right, well, let's start with cognitive dump. Okay, so this is going to get pretty opinionated, I guess. This is everything. Let's assume I'm dying next week. All right, scales. All right, you shouldn't learn the scale. You shouldn't learn the minor scale as 7 different positions. You should learn it as 5 different positions. So they are. Well, I'm busy watching the screen. Because those 5 are the minor pentatonic shapes. They're corollaries of the minor pentatonic shapes. They're just minor pentatonic with these extra colorful notes, right? Right? That the notes that add some color to the otherwise very blunt sounding, but powerful sounding minor pentatonic. So, never mind that I played that. 7 different scales, 5 different scale shapes, because people learn 7 different scale shapes because they think each scale shape is a mode, and that's extremely, incredibly not true. It's just a category mistake. All the 7 modes are in each of the 5 scale shapes. So any one that I play, that's all 7 modes. A mode isn't something defined by the scale that you play. It's let alone is it defined by the first note that you play. Why should that be at all? You know, the note that you start on. Why should that note be privileged at all? Wouldn't that imply that with each lick that you change modes? Let alone is it determined by what scale shape you happen to be in, as if the listener has any investment or any way of telling or anything that you play indicates what the lowest note of that scale shape is. I mean, the lowest note of that scale shape is completely irrelevant. The mode is something that a chord progression has. You know, if I have that scale shape, its mode is determined by which of those 7 notes is the main note. And which one sounds like the main note? It's the one that the chord progression says is the main note. So if I got... So right now, I got no choice. Like, there's nothing I can play that will make this not the main note. In other words, I'm in Lydian now. And any position I go to, it's still Lydian. Or if I grab a different instrument and start playing it on piano, it's still F sharp Lydian. Because the chord progression has defined that note, that F sharp out of this scale, that F sharp, the chord progression has defined that's the main chord. And the soloist or any decorative element, any decorative note is powerless to fight the chord progression. In other words, is powerless to say, no, this is the main note. You know, whatever note is the bottom of the scale shape I happen to be thinking, that's the main note now. You know, so mode is the main note. The mode is like, it's got a very rich philosophical history. It's related to mood in language, you know. So we say the indicative mood, the subjunctive mood, the optative mood, which English really doesn't have, I think. Its relationship to reality. So the indicative mood, that it means that it's claimed that it is actual. The subjunctive mood means that it claims that it could be. The optative mood is something that's hoped for, you know, and but it's the idea is it's this one thing that you're talking about, but it can have these three different relations to reality. Modal logic in philosophy talks about, you know, possible world scenarios. Like, so possible worlds show whether something is that sort of semantics show whether something is actual, in other words, like the indicative mood, whether something could be the case, so that something is possible, or whether something is necessary or impossible, whether it exists in all possible worlds or no possible worlds. But the idea is it's this one thing that you're talking about, but it bears all. It has these different roles in the discussion, or these different relationships to reality, and that's the idea here. I mean, here is there's one scale, you know, it's the minor scale. Now you can get into other genuinely different scales, but 99% of the time, unless you do fairly weird stuff, you're probably not going to be thinking of those. There's one scale, it's the major scale or the minor scale, it's the same thing, and it can be used in 7 different ways. Just like, you know, the stairs down to the parking lot from my apartment, I can refer to them as the stairs to the parking lot, but if I'm down in the parking lot, I'll probably refer to them as the stairs up to my apartment. It's the one thing, but I can further distinguish it by referring to one of its uses, one of its roles, one of its modes, mode, role, right? Or relationship. So there's one scale, unless you want to get into the weirder scales, but 99% of the time you're just going to be using this one scale. The different modes are something given to it, defined by the chord progression, because the chord progression is the strongest sounding thing. It's the thing that says this low note is the main note, or this low note. So back to this same scale. So this note is now my main note. I don't have a say-so in the matter. I can sit there and play this all I want. And I can't fight that from the bass player. Right? Now, if the song is whatever, you know, I mean, it's so, right? That's my main note. So no matter what note I play, you know, I can go to position 4, which other people would define as Phrygian mode, because it starts on the Phrygian note, but that note is powerless. It doesn't matter. I can do that all I want. This is still the main note because the bass player says so. The chord progression says so. And that goes for any of them. So a mode is just, it's first and foremost, it's almost exclusively, it's a compositional tool. It's something that you write with, you know. It's like if you want your song to be all hopeful sounding, then you might write, you know, based around the 4 chord. You know, you make your chord progression to where the 4 chord is the main chord, and then it's Lydian. That's just the way it is. If you want it to be sad sounding, you'll write around the 6th chord. If you want it to be happy sounding, you'll make the 1 chord the main chord. By the way, the 6th and the 1 chord, they will be the main chord. So talking compositionally here, think of it like let's say I have a brand new red sweater, and I have some brand new dark blue jeans, and I have a bunch of socks that I can wear. I mean that I need to wash, right? If I wash the socks with the red sweater, my socks are going to be pink. That red sweater will impart its color to my white socks. If I wash them with my brand new dark blue jeans, they will turn bluish, right? They can't remain neutral. The white socks can't remain neutral if washed with these other ones. They can if I do what I should do, which is keep those two things out of the laundry when I just wash my white socks together. So as a compositional tool, if you want to write, so Aeolian, that's the 6th chord. If you want to write an Aeolian song, you just pretty much have the 6th chord there. Right? I mean, just whatever. As long as 6 is there, it's probably going to sound like the main chord. 2, 3. So 6 is your dark blue jeans. 1 is your red sweater. They will take over the laundry. 7, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are white socks. Okay? 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 7. They will sound sad if the last chord the listener heard, if the last chord you wrote was a 6. With the last out of 1 or 2, or 1 or 6. So 1 or 6. So I'm in the key of D flat for no good reason. You want me to put it in C? Here, I'll put it in C so you can practice on piano. So you can just play white keys on the piano. All right, so 6th chord. If I play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of those white socks, notice they all sound sad because I washed them with dark blue jeans. If the last chord you heard was the 1, they all sound happy. Right? 1 or 6 will take over your chord progression. It will say, if 6 was the last of the 2 that you heard, every intervening chord will sound sad until you hit a 1. If 1 was the last chord you heard out of 1 or 6, every intervening chord will sound happy until you hit a 6. There are ways of mitigating that. I'm not saying there aren't counterexamples, but mainly you mitigate it through, like, if the 1 just showed up for a nanosecond, right? So in a football analogy, it's like who's the team leader of the Tampa Bay Bucks this upcoming season. Now I'm dating this video. All right, the team leader of the Tampa, and I'm ruling out the Euros here who are watching, who don't give a crap. All the Americans know Tampa Bay Bucks, the team leader, even though hasn't been in that locker room until a month ago, is Tom Brady. Everybody knows it because by the force of his presence, his mere presence, it means he takes over the locker room. If you want to write a song that's just white socks, if you want to write a Dorian song, or a Lydian song, or a Phrygian song. So in other words, Dorian is the 2 chord, Phrygian's the 3 chord. So if a song is based around, if a chord progression is, or a section of a chord progression is based around the 3 chord, like your verse is just. I'm focusing on that 3 chord. It sounds pretty dark because you're hearing Phrygian, As soon as Tom Brady shows up in the locker room, that's it. It's hard to fall for this as being what counts as resolution. And by the way, that's what we mean by a song being in a mode, like what we mean there is what counts as resolution to your ears. What is it that sounds like that's home, right? And if the 3 chord sounds like home, then that chord progression is Phrygian. If the 2 chord sounds like home, so. Then that's Dorian, right? It's playful. If the 5 chord sounds like home, so, right? Then that's That's Mixolydians, fun times, right? Just like Dorian. Phrygian's really dark, you know, but notice to make these chord progressions, I need to pretty much keep Tom Brady out of the locker room. That one chord is going to take over and my song's going to be happy. I need to keep Peyton Manning or Ray Lewis out of the locker room. 6, that's gonna take over the locker room. That will be the team leader, right? So 6 and 1 will turn all of your white socks. Sorry, now I'm mixing the metaphor. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 to whatever extent you're going to use it. 2, 3, 4, and 5. They will take on the character that that they're given by red sweater, the 1 chord, the happy sounding thing. It'll make them all happy. Dark blue jeans, 6 chord, it'll make them all sad, turn them all blue. And then that's of course why you've got some songs that will more or less equally use the. They don't even have to equally use them, but they use a heavy dose of both 6 and 1 to where, at times the song sounds happy, at times the song sounds sad. Off the top of my head, "The Longer I Run" by a writer named Peter Bradley Adams. It's great. It's like 6, 5, 1, 5, 4, 6. Like it does it in such a way that you're pretty sure it's sad, and then seconds later you're pretty sure it's happy. I'm breezing through it so it doesn't give the right effect. Here's a cool example. Digging in the Dirt, Peter Gabriel. So a lot of another Peter writer. So something in me dark and sticky, right? All the time it's getting stronger, right? He's basing everything punishingly around that 2 chord. He's in the key of C, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the key of that song. Don't talk back. Drive the car. Touch your mouth. It's 2 chord, 5 chord. Don't say nothing. He's talking about being in therapy, or he needs therapy. He's really angry. The lyrics are pretty aggressive, and then the chorus shows up, and Peter Gabriel goes right to the 6 chord, and the lyrics turn really serious all of a sudden also, because Peter Gabriel kind of a master, right? Kind of underrated, and we overrate a lot of sacred cattle over some people, but digging in the dirt. So 6, digging. Notice that 6, everything just turned really somber. Digging in the dirt. 5, 1, stay with 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord. 6, digging in the dirt. 5, 1, find the 4 chord, 3 chord, 5, 6 chord, 4, 1 over 3, 5. We'll talk about these chord shapes later. Right? So everything turns really serious, so he turns to the more serious, less fun chords, 1 and 6, but especially the 6 chord, right? So modes are mainly a writing tool. As an improviser, you just figure, what mode is this, and you need to know where to stick your scale, and that's it. But the entire scale, everywhere, stem to stern, front, bottom of the fretboard to the top of the fretboard, is that mode, because the song you're playing over, the chord progression you're playing over, is that mode, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that raises the smaller methodological question of how do you know where the modes are? And it is not by learning 7 different shapes, by the way. The problem there is with 7 different shapes, you end up with shapes that among other things, I mean, you obviously you learn 2 extra shapes, so it takes a little longer. 2 is it reinforces that misunderstanding of what a mode is, as you think it's a scale shape, and it's not. Third, most importantly, they cease to bear any relationship to the 5 pentatonic shapes that we all know. And so you end up always sounding like you're either playing the major/minor scale, just like, like the 7-note scale, or pentatonics, and you it makes it difficult, if not you are completely blind to how it is that you could walk this continuum between the two, right? Over here is the simple American sounding pentatonic scale. It's simple, but it's blunt and it's powerful, and it'll fight you. You know what I mean? Over here is this British, you know, it's not aggressive, but it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's from heaven. It's beauty, right? And most players sound like they're playing one or the other at all times. But some players, like Eric Johnson or whoever, sound like they can walk this continuum, like they're beautiful sounding playing. Their 7-note scale stuff has this pentatonic aspect where they're playing pentatonics. Right? I can grab this note from here. If I'm seeing this as with bonus notes, that when I invoke these bonus notes, all of a sudden things turn really beautiful sounding, right? So I can keep this aggression with this British, this European beauty. Sorry, whatever. It's more German than anything, arguably. I mean, look, for as much as we Americans will brag about American music and stuff, dude, Bach's fingerprint is on every single bit of it. So anyway, so learning the modes. It's way easier than anything. I'm going to tell you a dumb story because you'll remember a dumb story. Okay. Let's say that you have, let's say that anybody, like you go to the fridge, you know, so your wife or whoever goes to the fridge, they pull out the mayonnaise jar, the pickle jar, or whatever, and they can't get it open, and they bring it to you, and somehow you just have the gift, you know. They bring you the pickle jar, no matter how tightly it's on there, you just pops right off, and for whatever reason, you are just the master of doing that. And so you're so good, in fact, that you decide that you're going to go into business for yourself. You're going to be you want to market yourself as a plumber, but you don't really work in toilets and, you know, pipes and stuff, because that stuff probably takes years and years of training and all sorts of, you know, of licensing. But you're a plumber, but you just work with lids, so you're a lid plumber, right? So you get you know, a 1-800 number or whatever, and the 1-800 number is 1-800-ALIDPLuMA. And I can't write here. I don't know that I'm going to edit this video. Maybe I will. ALIDPLuMA. PLUMA. Now the U I had to cheat on a little bit because I needed a vowel. But all right, watch this. Position 1 is what we're calling this. Right? That's always position 1. No matter what mode you're in, if you're playing the major scale, that's position 1. That's what we call it. Position 1. That's just its name. Now, its name doesn't mean that it has some sort of primacy over the other ones necessarily. It's just a name. They could be called Mo, Larry, Curly, Joe, and Shemp, right? But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The numbers do imply an order, right? Which Mo would be 1, I suppose, in that case. So there's position 1. It's just called position 1. Now it's position 1 if we're thinking the major scale, C major scale, if we're thinking the A minor scale, if we're thinking the E Phrygian, we just call it position 1. It's just position 1, right? We don't have different numbers for the different shapes. When you open that guitar book, the guitar scales book, and it's unnecessarily long, and you look at it and you look at, here's the Dorian mode, and it teaches you a bunch of shapes that you've already learned as a different scale. That's where the failing happens. You need to just learn 5 shapes, and they just have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's 1 is called 1 no matter which of the modes you're in. So, but here's how you know here's how you decide where to stick it for any given mode. ALIDPLuMA, 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 PLUMA. I had to. There's also 2 L's, so bear with me. A is Aeolian, L is Locrian, I is Ionian, Ionian is the major scale. Aeolian is the minor scale, right? Locrian, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Phrygian, Phrygia. L is Lydian, M is Mixolydian. Aeolian, Ionian, Aeolian, Locrian, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, ALID, a lid, PL, plum, but I had to introduce the U into it. There's no U. And then M is Mixolydian, and there's A again, a lid-plumma, right? Okay, so you need F sharp, the example we had earlier, F sharp Lydian. Go to the Lydian note, a lid-plumma there, put it on F sharp. Boom, the whole scale, every position is F sharp Lydian. Let's say you need F sharp Dorian, right? Here's the ALID, there's the D note, put it on F sharp, boom, the whole scale, everything is, there's position 1, position 2, position 3, it's all F sharp Dorian. What do you need? You need B flat Locrian, right? All right, so here's the Locrian note, put it on B flat, boom, the whole thing is there. You need F Mixolydian, right? Find ALIDPLM. There's M. Put it on F. Boom. But there's position 1. Position 1's home for everything. Is the way we're doing it. And also, you can see them as pentatonics, right? Because you learn your scales the right way. Okay. A lid-plumma is how you know all the things. What else about scales? If you want to get into melodic minor and stuff like that, then yeah, you can go about that. Melodic minor, there's some good uses for it. I'm not going to talk about them. I don't give a crap. I do give a slight crap. The best book, if you want to go to Mars, is Noel Johnston's modes. What's it called? I forget the exact name of it, but Noel Johnston's book is if you want to go to Mars, that's somebody who lives in Jupiter, and he'll bring you to Mars, and one day he'll write a book of how to get to Jupiter. It's extremely advanced. What else do you want to talk about? Chords in a key. You should know this. Whoops. I keep looking there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? And again, look, the 6th chord, if I write, you should be able to, again, if I write a song where that 6 is the main chord, then it's a sad song, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and you should play songs by chord numbers. Go look them up. So, but once you know this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's a couple of places we can go. Let's connect positions 1 to the bottom of that, because look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's 1. This is where position, in that same key, position 1 of our scale would go. Let's memorize these. Now, these are very reflective of me, so you could come up with your own formulations of them, but these are sort of skeletal versions of what I would do. You know what? I'm going to save this. Let's talk about chord progressions. Here, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you should play a bunch of chords a bunch of songs where you're thinking of chord numbers, right? Right. So, what's a song? I don't know. I just played one, right? So, digging in the dirt in this new key, right? Digging in the dirt. So 6, 5, 1. Stay with 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord. All right, I can play them as triads or 7th chords, whatever. You should learn them as triads and as 7th chords, even though that's kind of lame. These are kind of lame, but we'll end up in a really good place with these in the long run. Okay, those of you who did college music theory, you probably don't know it because they didn't do it in a very guitar-y way, right? So if you want to know it on guitar, here's your freshman theory course on guitar. This is how you know it, right? All right, so these are the numbers, right? There's a bunch of rules that we're not going to bother to follow from classical theory. But the way classical theory proceeds is, you learn it in the way that, in a way as if they're rules, but they're really, I guess, reflective of certain the taste that people had and that composers had in certain milieu, and so you're treating them like rules, and they strike us as more or less arbitrary rules because they're not really rules at all, and we're gonna ignore those. But if you want to know all the trickery, we're going to work in those in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 if you want. But by the way, 3 and 4 are together, 7 and 1 are together. Never, ever, ever describe the major scale as whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's garbage, crap, garbage. Ignore it. 3 and 4 are together, 7 and 1 are together. That's arguably the most important axiom of all of music. 3 and 4, 7 and 1. B and C, E and F is an important axiom as well, but 3 and 4, 7 and 1. 3 and 4, 7 and 1. That's the guiding principle. That's your measuring device for all of chords and all of scales. Right? 3 and 4 are a half step apart. 7 and 1 are a half step apart. So if I got 1, and that means that's a 7. Whether I'm talking about within a chord, like here's my 1 of the chord, and there's a 7 of that chord. Anyway, sorry. I don't want to get too bogged down on that, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's all the tricks that you learned in freshman theory, and we'll probably get into sophomore theory, right? All right. We're going to ignore that the 5 chord has to go to a tonic. It's got to go to 6 or 1. We're going to ignore that crap because screw it. Who cares? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got secondary dominants, right? So just like the 5 to 1 can happen, and traditionally Western music is kind of traditionally, I mean, it's long since outdated, but is gearing up to get to that 5 so it can get back to the 1. It's like building that tension in the 5 chord and releasing it to the 1 or to the 6, but to something that feels like resolution. There's that term again. 5, 1, 5, 6, right? So just like you can have 5, 1. By the way, this is going to explain all of bebop, right? You're going to look at bebop chord progressions, which were really, I guess, mostly just pop songs. And you're going to be like, oh, I understand pretty much everything that's happening here. It's going to explain dang near all of everything, these rules. McCartney, nobody knew these rules, these tricks, these traditional tricks, not rules, better than McCartney. And he throws in, as far as I know, Beatles stuff, which isn't as well as I should, but he uses them all. He knows all those tricks. So you'll look at Beatles stuff and you'll be like, oh, I see exactly what's happening here. And I can see it as numbers on my guitar. Secondary dominance, just like I can have 5 to 1 going to the actual 1, I could have any chord's 5. Let's say that I'm going to the 2. I could have its 5, and I'll turn it into a major triad or a dominant chord. So let's say I got 1, and I'm going to my 2 chord. But let's say I want to take the dirt road to the 2 chord. I'm going to do its 5 before I get to the. Now in freshman theory and sophomore theory, probably they're going to teach you that leading tone has to go up a half step. Screw that. Nobody cares about that anymore. If you like that sound or this sound, where the leading tone goes down to the flat 7, right? Then do it. If you like that sound, do it. The leading tone needs to go up a half step to the tonic. That's crap. You don't have to do that. So I'm going 1, and now I'm going to go to 2. I'm going to put it in the key of C so you can play along on the piano if you want. If you're like me, a bad piano player, and you'd rather just play the white keys, I'll put it on C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to my 2 chord, and instead of going straight there, I'm going to play its 5. or right? I can precede any chord by its own 5 chord. That's called secondary dominance. So, what does it look like in a bunch of scenarios? If you want to build up tension, we talked about 6 chord makes everything sound sad. If you want to build up tension to make it sad, you want to do this Hadouken thing. I don't know why I'm doing that, right? Street Fighter. Then build up tension to go to the 6th chord. Do its 5, the 5 of 6. That's one of the few bits of classical terminology, 5 of whatever, that's actually super useful, right? Some of it is crap and doesn't bear much relationship to, I told you I was going to get opinionated, doesn't bear much relationship to contemporary musical decision making, right? But 5 of, fill in the blank, that's great terminology. So 1, and I'm going to go to my 6th chord. But let's say I want to do its 5. So I'm going to do the 5 of 6. So, right? Any tonic, any root here, any chord here is going to have its 5 there, right? You probably already know these patterns on guitar. But if you got a 1 here, there's a 5 here. If you got a 1 on this string, there's a 5 here. You need to know that 5-1 or 5-1. 5-1, 5-1, right? You need to know that pattern. So I'm going here to the 6. So its 5 would be right here, the 3. So 1. But I'm going to turn it into a dominant chord. Right? So 1, 5 of 6. I can play it as a triad. 6. Now I'm going to go to that 2 again. 5 of 2. 5 of 5. 1. Now, how do I do a 5 of 4? I turn this 1. So, hey, Jude, don't make it 5 chord. Take a sad song and make it 1 chord. Remember 4 to let her into your 1. Then you can 5 chord to make it better. Anytime you feel afraid, whatever. What did McCartney just do? He turned the 1 chord into a 5 of 4 by turning it unnaturally into a dominant chord. Anytime you feel afraid, okay, the 5 chord 1. There it is, and you know what's coming next. It's that 4, right? So 5 of 4, right? 5 of 5, 5 of 1, which would just be called 5. 5 of 6, 5 of 2. Right? And you need to sit there. What you need to do is pause the video, sit there and write with these over and over. Get them to where you can just bam, 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 right? It's where you see them. And over time, especially if you want to do, jazz gigs, you'll start to hear them. You'll be like, oh, 5 of 2, 2. Like songs you don't know. There's only so many of these things that happen. Or you don't have to do jazz gigs. Go listen to Sinatra tunes or whatever. All the old, those jazz vocal standards. If you'll listen to those, you'll hear every one of these tricks and not a whole lot else actually. So okay, next trick. So that's secondary dominance. You can do secondary 2-5 ones. So instead of just the 5 of whatever, you can do the 2-5 of whatever. So hey, Jude, don't make it a 5 chord. Remember 4 chord, and you can 5 chord to make it better. Now I'm going to take a liberty here and do something that McCartney could have done. Anytime you feel afraid, right? Instead of just going straight to the 2, I did it into the 4 chord. I preceded it with its 2-5 instead of just its 5, and you could do that anywhere. So there's also minor 2-5, right? The difference in the minor 2-5 and the major 2-5 is oddly enough, it's really just the 2 that's different. So if the 2 is half diminished, then it's a minor 2-5, but it doesn't even have to go to minor. So what Isley Brothers song is that? It's from the Biggie Smalls song. Big Papa, but also what's it called? Between the Sheets. Ooh, girl, ain't no mystery. At least, as far as I can see, I don't know what key the original's in, but again, this is why you start speaking numbers, because you just hear numbers, right? 6, so 4. Ooh, girl, 5 of 6. Ain't no mystery. 6, 2, 5 of 4. At least 4. As far as I can see, I wanna keep you here. In fact, I think they're, yeah, that's it. 2, 5 of 6. Laying next to me, sharing our love between. Right? Anyways, billions and zillions of examples of this, right? So anyway, 2, 5 of whatever, that's cool, whatever, who cares? Bebop does it a whole bunch. But that 2, 5 to 4 is really popular right now. All this neo soul crap. Sorry. It's so, I don't know. It's just so boring to me after a while. Sorry. Hate away. All right, so that's secondary 2/5s. Let's call it secondary 2/5s, right? Tritone substitutions. You need to know this, which kind of happens in classical also. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I can precede anything with its 5, well, its 5 can be replaced with its flat 2 as a dominant chord. And the reason is, I know a lot of you know this, but its main 2 notes, main notes that give it the color, the flat 7 and the 3, are the same as this chord's flat 7 and 3, but they're just reversed. Here, the flat 7 of this chord is the 3 of this chord, and its flat 7 is its 3. So they just reverse roles. So there's this odd relationship. So basically, whereas we said any chord can be preceded by its 5, any chord can also be preceded by its flat 2. So right? So let's say I'm going to do a 5 of 2. I could have gone, right? And I'm doing 5 of 5. But I could go, so instead of 5 of 2, 5 of 5, I'm going to do flat 2 of 5. Instead of doing 5, 1, I could go, right? So, hey, you don't make it, remember to learn to hunt, then you can 5 chord to make it better. This probably won't sound great with the melody. Anytime you feel the feel. I can do it. It's bolder. You run a little more melodic risk there. And that one failed the gamble. But you do want to typically agree with, if there's a melody, I say the melody is sacred. Don't touch the melody, right? So if there's a melody, you don't alter it for the sake of your chords, right? In my opinion. So it's disturbing in a bad way to the listeners. But I mean, screw the listener. If you're looking to disturb them, just do it, whatever. But so any chord can be preceded by its flat 2. That's a dominant chord. Again, you need to pause the video and do this for a week and then come back, right? Come back to this. 7 of whatever. 7 of whatever. All right, so any chord could be preceded by its fully diminished 7. So root, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7, or you can call it a 6. So any chord can be preceded. So let's say I'm going to the 2. Let's say I'm going to the 6, because that's the example I keep using. 1. Oh, all right, so 1, right? I just did a tritone sub. So think of all the ways you can get to a given chord. One, I tritone subbed to it, right? I did its flat 2 as a dominant, and I got there, right? Or I can do its 5 as regular secondary dominant. 1. I keep using that shape, which I know you classical guys, the voice leading is going to drive you crazy. So let's do it this way. Right, 1. Right, 1, 5 of 2, 2. Now we're going to do 1, 7 of 2. Right? Fully diminished chord a half step below the 2. I'm going to approach it from below. So I can approach it from a half step above with a dominant chord, and approach it from a half step below with a diminished chord. Or of course a fifth above with a dominant. Now, so let's say I'm going to go to that 6, and I want to Hadouken my way into it, right? And I can go 5 of 6, or I can go 1, tritone sub, or I can do 1, oops, whoop, my hand misfired, 7 of 6, 6, right? And you need to be 7 of 5, right? So 1, 4, 7 of 5, 7 of 6, 6, 7 of 3, 7 of 2. I can sit there and overdo it like that, or 7 of 1. I don't have to do a half diminished. I could make it a. In fact, what sounds really cool is doing the 7 is naturally a half diminished chord, turning it, playing that, and then turning it into a diminished 7. I think that's pretty. So 7 of whatever, 5 of whatever, flat 2 of whatever, right? Tritone sub. You need to see all of these options, you know, while you play it. McCartney does all these, I think. I don't know. He does a lot of them. Seems like he knows them. Borrowing from a parallel dimension, right? All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say that I borrow from C minor. Here's really what that's going to come down to is I could turn this 4 chord into a minor chord instead. I could turn the 5 chord into a minor chord. That's really not going to sound like borrowing in most cases. Most of the time you see that, it's actually part of a 2-5-1-4, or it might be a Mixolydian song that you're mistaking for that. So the ones that you'll actually use, 1, so you got 1, and you may often use a flat 3 that's a major chord. So let's say I've got my chord. So I'm playing some song and I'm getting the sound of C major in your head, and then I play. I mean, is that something from Star Wars? Right? That's what that is. Borrowing from C minor. Right? So you'll often do a flat 3 chord. By the way, make it major 7. A minor 4 chord. Usually, technically, that may not be a case of borrowing in a lot of cases, because usually it won't be a minor 7 chord. It would take a regular 7 or a minor. A lot of people will play them as minor 6s, but screw that. Don't worry about it. A flat 6 chord that's also a major 7, or a flat 7 that's a dominant 7. They can all be triads, by the way. So I mean, that's a bunch of songs. Mariah Carey, "Can't Let Go" from the 90s. So even though I try, I can't let go. Something in my eyes captures my soul. Right? Cheesy, but I mean, you know, and a lot of this stuff can be heavy-handed. If you use it very sparingly, because you need a splash of color, it can be very effective. If you're constantly using it, I don't know, it could, as usual, Cheese to me has to do with making your point more obvious than it needs to be, right? So movies, jokes, literature, but especially music. I mean, music gets cheesy in no time, and most music is really corny. Music that tries to be very dramatic, that tries to be very emotional, most of the time just ends up being really cheesy because they don't have a command of subtlety. So they make the fact that they're trying to be sad a little too obvious, and that's when it becomes cheese. Underdoing things, like I say, go over people's heads on it. If err on the side of going over somebody's head, they don't get what the point is. That's what I say. But but risk them not understanding you, or just outright subvert them. Or you can make it really obvious. Whatever, like most music does. So we've got borrowing, which really means we're just taking from, if I'm in C major, I'm going to take from C minor, which really is going to come down to, traditionally it's just going to come down to those examples: a flat 3 major chord or major 7 chord, a 4 that's minor. It could be more than these examples, but I'm saying we're just going to narrow it down to the ones that actually end up happening. A flat 6 that's major or major 7, and then a flat 7 that's major or dominant. What else? There's freshman theory through, the most of the good parts of freshman theory through sophomore theory. Okay, here. All right, I'm going to say in this key. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You saw Kill Bill Volume 2. She goes to study with this master martial artist, right? This is the guy who kills people with his bare hands. He's got some technique. It makes their heart explode, blah, blah, blah. She goes up there, and she's fairly humble, but he asks her, what are you good at? And she says, I'm really good at so-and-so, and I'm more than good at, more than proficient, were her words, I think, at so-and-so. And he just thinks that's a joke. Like, she thinks she's such hot stuff. So he says, I'm going to come down there, and if you can hit me a single time, you are my master. So he comes down, she starts swinging at him, and he just is barely moving. And there's one sequence where she is doing particularly ornate stuff, and he doesn't even bother moving because he can see, she's doing all of this fancy stuff. He's barely doing anything. And in that scene, I think something very instructive is embedded, and that is the question of what does mastery look like? Does mastery look like doing a whole bunch of stuff, or does it look like the ability to do jack squat and still kill it, right? And to do the least and still kill it. And so you can imagine, let's say somebody's playing through giant steps. Giant steps has these changes. I just started on the wrong chord, I know. Has these changes that, that bear very little relationship. They bear a predictable relationship to each other, but they don't bear a traditional relationship to each other. And if you saw somebody who was holding 2 notes, and they could navigate through giant steps at any tempo, but just barely changing, they not only would that be very impressive visually, but it might actually also sound like the coolest version of giant steps you ever heard. Something about that continuity between them, that sounds so good. And to the extent that, to some extent, this bears a certain hallmark of a 50s rock. Right? These giant shapes that are moving parallel to one another, and in a way that it's just not. I think there's a certain beauty that's lacking in it. Whereas if I were able to play the chord progressions like through any song without moving, that might, there might be a certain beauty available there. So let's say that I were going to play All Along the Watchtower. All Along the Watchtower is just 6, 5, 4. There must be some kind of way out of here, said the joker to the thief. There was too much confusion. I can't get no relief to her. Right? If I can play through a chord progression with a certain continuity, let's put it conservatively, at least it might sound different than what most people sound like. If we put it a little more liberally, it might just sound outright better, you know. Although I don't know, if we were conditioned by decades of that type of playing, you might really think that there must be some kind of way out of here. That the shapes moving in parallel sound really great. But more importantly, that approach can lead us to kind of a new way of approaching scales and chords altogether, in a way that sort of obliterates the difference, and in a way that will open up this well. I'm almost at an hour here, so I'm just going to stop. That will open up this well that will that can last you the rest of your life. I'm a good 15 years into thinking like this, and I swear I come up with new stuff every day, and it's just because of this method that we'll go to eventually. It seems like it hasn't run out of ways to surprise me, this method. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to put it conservatively, because technically, I don't know if, I'm sure at some point it'll be like, okay, I need something new. But so far, it seems like I always have voicings available, and that I can play whatever in a way that I've never played it before. You know what I mean? So that this method seems to suggest that there are so many options available that it'll take you, at least it's taken me 15 plus years to plumb them all, and I don't think I'm there yet, So when we cover that, it'll hopefully be something that you can go back to for years and stuff. And at the same time, we should talk about improvisation. How to.